Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a world where beauty isn't filtered through soft lighting or editing apps. It's carved, scraped, boiled, and bled into being. You are stepping through a warped mirror into the Middle Ages, where vanity has teeth and the price of charm might just be your lifespan. In this world, your makeup routine starts with soot and ends with a prayer. The nobles flaunt skin so pale it looks haunted, and peasants, they just try to stay alive long enough to laugh about it. You probably won't survive this one, but let's see how long you'd last anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where my night owls are tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in front of what passes for a mirror. Polished metal, dull as a puddle. The reflection wavers. Half you, half ghost. Someone nearby tells you to rub a little soot mixed with animal fat over it. It helps you see your complexion better, they say. You try it, and the face that stares back looks both fascinating and a little frightening. Welcome to the medieval vanity ritual, where looking good means alchemy, suffering, and a touch of madness. The first thing you notice is how dirty beauty feels. Oils, soot, dung, and blood are all part of the routine. Historians still argue whether hygiene really was as terrible as the stories say. Some point to records of regular bathing in towns like 14th century Paris, while others insist the idea of cleanliness was more about spiritual purity than soap. Either way, your nose confirms that the air here is textured. You watch a noble woman nearby pat her cheeks with a paste of vinegar and lead oxide. The smell burns your eyes, but she smiles, explaining that the lead makes her face glow white, like the Virgin herself. You try not to mention that the Virgin probably didn't have lead poisoning. The maid dabs the mixture on carefully with a goose feather, hands trembling. One wrong move, and the lady's skin will blister. In this world, pale skin isn't just fashionable, it's moral. It tells everyone you don't work outdoors, that your hands have never seen a plow or a bucket. You, lucky time traveler, probably forgot sunscreen once and got roasted. Here, a tan is a social death sentence. So everyone chases that ghostly glow, even if it means their faces slowly turn gray beneath the powder. There's a quiet irony in how deathly whiteness literally kills them. You find yourself in a marketplace where the merchants hawk beauty secrets alongside spices and charms. One offers Venetian ceruse, a fine white powder imported from Italy, made from, you guessed it, lead. Another booth boasts crocodile dung as a facial mask. Tightens the pores, the vendor insists. You can't tell if it's a sales pitch or a curse. A fringe tidbit you overhear. Some women mixed pigeon droppings with vinegar to soften their hands. The idea was that the acid and ammonia would exfoliate. You picture a medieval spa day. Ladies gossiping, hands submerged in pigeon sludge. Pretending this is luxury. Someone laughs. Maybe it's you. Nearby, a monk walks past and mutters about vanity being a sin. The church often condemned makeup as deceit, but nobles found loopholes. It's not vanity, they'd argue. It's preserving God's design. That's one way to explain why you're coating your skin with toxins. Your senses are overwhelmed. Wood smoke, sweat, rancid oil, sweet herbs, trying and failing to mask it all. A barber surgeon explains how he makes rouge from crushed cochineal insects imported from Spain, their red pigment fetching a price higher than gold. He stirs it with honey and fat to make a paste. You realize that even in the Middle Ages, beauty was global trade, built on exotic imports and a little exploitation. Some things never change. Historians still argue whether men were just as vain as women. Paintings show dandified courtiers with plucked brows and perfumed gloves, but written accounts mock such habits as effeminate. Yet here you are, watching a knight secretly comb his hair with pig fat and rose oil, checking his reflection in a polished shield before heading to court. You decide not to judge. Medieval lighting is cruel to everyone. The tools of beauty, razors, tweezers, and powders, sit beside tools of surgery. The line between medicine and makeup is thin. Alchemists whisper about transmutation of the flesh, using mercury and lead not just for gold, but for the illusion of divine perfection. You sense that vanity here isn't just physical, it's spiritual, a craving to be closer to heaven. As night falls, the candles turn the room molten. Faces gleam, eyes shimmer, powders crack in the heat. Someone fans herself with a parchment fan painted with saints. The irony isn't lost on you. Beauty and blasphemy flickering in the same flame. You run a finger across your cheek and feel the roughness of the day's grime. Someone offers you a bowl of beautifying mud, rich with herbs and ash. It pulls out impurities. She swears. You apply it hesitantly. It smells like wet forest and regret. When it dries, you peel it off and find your skin softer, but also streaked gray. The woman nods approvingly. That's how you know it's working. Sure, that's one way to put it. You can't help but laugh quietly. Modern beauty influencers talk about detox masks. Medieval ones actually detox you to death as you lie down on a straw mattress. Later, your face caked with experimental concoctions. You hear mice scratching somewhere nearby. You realize how strange it is that through all this suffering, through dung masks, toxic powders, and moral condemnation, people still chased beauty, not because they were foolish, but because they were human. To be admired, to feel special, to belong, it is the same impulse that drives you to check your reflection in your phone camera today. You stare up at the flickering ceiling, thinking, maybe the mirror hasn't changed much at all, only what we smear on it. The candle sputters. The air smells faintly of vinegar and rose water, and your eyelids grow heavy. Tomorrow, someone will tell you about a new face paste made from ground pearls and egg whites. You'll probably try it. After all, surviving beauty here means surrendering to it, one bizarre ritual at a time. You wake to the faint hum of beeswax candles and the creak of timber rafters above your borrowed medieval bed. Your skin feels stiff, like old parchment. When you touch your cheek, flakes of dried powder fall away, lead, vinegar, and a whisper of yesterday's mistakes. Outside, a rooster crows, summoning you back into a world where whiteness isn't just preferred. It is the only acceptable kind of beauty. You sit up, already sweating under layers of linen. The window is no bigger than your palm, and the sunlight squeezing through looks like liquid gold. The woman in the corner, your temporary guide in this century, hands you a jar. Whitening paste, she says proudly. Inside, the mixture gleams pale and silky, but the smell, sharp and metallic, tells another story. Lead carbonate, vinegar, and sometimes ground chalk. You must look like a lily, she insists, for lilies are pure. In medieval Europe, pale skin was a billboard of status. You weren't tanned because you didn't labor under the sun. You were born above the plow. In portraits, noble women appear as ghostly apparitions, skin like moonlight, veins faintly visible beneath the surface. Artists even exaggerated it, using blue pigment to trace veins across painted necks and hands. The paler you looked, the closer you seemed to heaven, or at least to the higher tax bracket. You take a tentative dab of the paste and smooth it over your cheek. It burns immediately. A polite smile forms anyway, because that's what everyone else is doing. Across the room, two young girls giggle as they mix vinegar with powdered white lead in small shells. One mentions that her cousin fainted after wearing it all day, her skin blistering beneath the mask. The other shrugs. She must have had bad blood. You silently decide not to mention poisoning. It's not a concept anyone here seems eager to accept. Historians still argue whether the nobility fully understood how dangerous these cosmetics were. Some claim ignorance. After all, toxicity wasn't part of the medical vocabulary yet. Others think they knew, but didn't care. Death from beauty was almost romantic, like wasting away from love or faith. You start to understand why ballads always end in tragedy. It's practically skincare philosophy. To achieve the perfect complexion, some go even further. You overhear whispers of women who let leeches feed on their faces to drain the excess blood that reddened their cheeks. Supposedly, it left them pale and pure. You imagine sitting there with tiny leeches clinging to your chin while someone praises your devotion to beauty. Medieval Spa Day, version 2. Just add bloodletting. Then there's the more creative crowd. A fringe tidbit from a traveling apothecary tells of powdered snakeskin mixed with honey as an anti-aging mask. Restores youth, he promises, his smile missing 2 teeth and several morals. You wonder if anyone's kept track of how many people aged backward, straight into their graves. A mirror, polished bronze, slightly warped, sits before you. Your reflection swims inside it, uneven but mesmerizing. The pale paste has dried into a cracking mask. You notice how it highlights every crease, every imperfection. Maybe that's the secret. If you look doll-like enough, no one notices that your skin can't breathe. One noblewoman strolls in, her face powdered to a near luminescent white. She's wrapped in velvet, the hem already darkened with mud. She instructs her maid to dust her neck with starch and flour to match her face. It must be even, she insists. Even God sees unevenness. You're not sure if that's theology or insecurity, but it sounds convincing in the moment. A servant brings out a small jar of rouge, cinnabar, a mercury compound, mixed with vinegar and oil. The woman dabs it onto her cheeks, creating a delicate pink glow over deadly white. You realize the medieval color palette was basically poison chic. Lead for white, mercury for red, arsenic for green. It's like a chemistry set designed by a fashion victim. You step outside for air, only to find peasants staring at you. Their faces are ruddy from sun and wind, healthy by your standards, but scandalous by theirs. A child points and giggles, calling you a ghost lady. You want to laugh, but your lips are tight with dried paste. Beauty, you realize, is a form of armor, and yours just happens to be toxic. Historians still argue whether this obsession came purely from class or from deeper fears: disease, sin, mortality. Pallor was often linked to virtue, and sickness to spirituality. The same look that today would earn you a wellness check back then earned you admiration. She looks delicate, someone would say admiringly. Translation: she's half a corpse. How divine. Later, in the courtyard, you find women grinding chalk into powder, mixing it with rose water. They say it's gentler than lead. You lean in and sniff. Dusty, faintly sweet, tolerable. One woman winks, whispering that it also works as a deodorant. If you re brave enough to powder under your arms, you decide to skip that particular experiment. A passing friar pauses, scolding the group for vanity. Paint is for Jezebels, he preaches. The women listen with polite smiles until he's gone, then laugh behind his back. If the Lord made us plain, one quips, surely he expects us to improve the design. You can't help but grin. Medieval feminism, spite-powered and slightly powdered. As the afternoon sun dips, you feel your face growing heavy. The paste begins to sweat off, streaking white rivulets down your neck. You imagine how horrifying that must look by candlelight. A woman notices and gently blots your skin with linen. You'll learn, she says kindly. Beauty is patience. That night, you watch her scrape the remaining powder from her face. With a dull knife, her skin raw beneath, she rubs olive oil over the wounds, whispering a prayer that tomorrow her complexion will be smoother. You think of modern skincare routines: serums, exfoliants, gentle cleansers. Here, it's knives and vinegar. Before you sleep, she offers a final tip. If your skin turns gray, rub onion juice over it. The saints swear it revives the flesh. You thank her, unsure which part of that sentence worries you more. As you lie back on straw and linen, your thoughts drift. All this striving for whiteness, for purity, for divine perfection, it's less about vanity and more about control. To look flawless is to rise above the chaos of mud, disease, and war. Maybe that S what beauty means here. Proof that you, still human in a world constantly trying to unmake you. You smile faintly. In the dark, half asleep, half haunted by your own ghostly reflection. Somewhere, a bell tolls. Another day of dangerous beauty waits. Morning again. You wake to the faint scratch of bristles against stone. Someone sharpening a blade. For a blissful second, you hope it's for breakfast. Then you realize it's for eyebrows. The woman from yesterday crouches beside a copper basin, holding a knife so close to her eye, you stop breathing. Can't leave stray hairs, she says. They make a lady look wild. You're officially awake. The medieval ideal of beauty demanded smoothness. Forehead, brows, even the temples had to look soft and hairless, as if light itself could glide across your skin without interruption. To achieve this, women plucked, singed, and scraped. There's no waxing salon here, just patience, pain, and a vague understanding of infection. She offers you a turn. You decline. Politely, you soon discover that the browless look was practically a status symbol. Paintings of noble women show them with domed foreheads, shaved clean halfway back to the crown. It made the face look larger, more celestial, according to one chronicler. Historians still argue whether this trend began for aesthetic or religious reasons. Some say it symbolized piety, others that it simply looked fashionable in candlelight. Either way, The result is alarming. A generation of people who look permanently surprised. You are handed a paste that smells faintly of sulfur and rotten eggs. It's a depilatory made from quicklime and orpiment, a bright yellow arsenic mineral. It eats the roots, your companion explains. You test a dot on your arm, and it immediately burns like betrayal. Beauty must sting, she adds helpfully. You decide to let your arm hair live its best life. A quirky tidbit reaches your ears in the marketplace later that day. Some women rubbed bat blood or crushed ants on their skin to discourage regrowth. Others preferred vinegar-soaked bread, applied overnight like a grim beauty patch. There's creativity, and then there's whatever this is. Not that men were immune to the trend. Young courtiers plucked their brows into thin arches and singed their beards with candle flames to achieve a refined look. You imagine the smell of burning hair wafting through a royal banquet, and suddenly your medieval appetite disappears. In a dimly lit chamber, you meet an apothecary who claims to have invented a gentle hair removal salve. He opens a jar, revealing a sludge the color of despair. Goose grease, arsenic, and cat urine, he boasts proudly. You stare at him, waiting for the punchline that never comes. He gestures for you to try it, and you realize too late that you are the punchline. You manage to escape with most of your dignity and eyebrows intact. Later, you're invited to a bathhouse where the wealthy come not just to wash, but to beautify. The air smells of herbs and steam. Women lounge around, chatting and exfoliating with rough cloths. One dips a linen strip into a bowl of hot resin, presses it against her leg, and yanks. The sound it makes is somewhere between applause and a scream. She grins through tears. Clean skin, clean soul, she insists. You nod, trying not to look horrified. Historians still argue whether regular bathing was common in the Middle Ages. Some evidence suggests many towns had public bathhouses until the church started frowning on the moral risks of shared nudity. Others believe it was mostly an urban luxury. Either way, the people here make a ritual of grooming. Half self-care, half self-punishment. A passing nobleman remarks that hair is the mark of beasts. The cleaner your body, the more civilized your soul. You glance down at your own arms and feel suddenly medievally uncivilized. When the bathhouse closes, you wander into the cool night. Outside, under torchlight, an old woman sells little pots of eyebrow paint made from soot and wine. For those who regret too much plucking, she says with a wink. You buy one out of curiosity, smearing a black arc above your brow. The result looks dramatic. Perfect, she says approvingly. You look like you're thinking dangerous thoughts. Back at your lodgings, you overhear women gossiping about Queen Isabella of France. They say she plucked her brows with golden tweezers and bleached her hair with vinegar in the sun. The bleaching part you'll face soon enough. But tonight, you're still caught in the ritual of removal. A maid helps her mistress prepare for bed by applying rose water to soothe her skin after plucking. You try it too. It stings, but the scent is lovely, like gardens after rain. You wonder how something so delicate could coexist with arsenic and lime in the same century. Another joke flits through your tired mind. If modern influencers have get ready with me videos, medieval women had suffer gracefully with me. You imagine the intro. Hey friends, today we're scraping our foreheads for holiness. The visual is almost enough to make you laugh out loud. which would definitely ruin your painted brows. As you drift closer to sleep, you reflect on how beauty here is less about attraction and more about discipline. Every plucked hair, every sting of vinegar is proof that you can control the body, tame it, civilize it, force it into divine order. In a world ruled by dirt and death, that control must have felt like salvation. You close your eyes and imagine all the women who did this before you. The noble woman with her trembling knife, the peasant girl with her lime paste, the monk secretly plucking his temples so he'd look serene during sermons, each one chasing the same fragile thing, the illusion that they could rise above their nature. Tomorrow, someone will show you how to bleach your hair in the sun, turning pain into radiance. But for now, your skin still hums from vinegar and regret. You breathe in the faint scent of rosewater and smoke, and let the medieval night swallow you whole. The rooster's back. You're starting to suspect it has a personal vendetta against your sleep schedule. You roll over, half asleep, until the sharp waft of something alarming drags you upright. It smells like a public latrine after a rainstorm. The culprit? A wooden bucket of yellow liquid sitting in the sun by the window. Your host smiles proudly. For your hair, she says. You blink. Surely not like that. But yes, exactly like that. Welcome to the golden age of medieval hair bleaching, where liquid sunshine is literally human urine left to ferment. The logic goes, if it strips color from cloth, it'll do wonders for your hair. The ammonia acts as a bleaching agent, and the smell acts as population control. She hands you a comb and a bowl. You want saint's hair, don't you? She asks, eyes gleaming. Apparently, blonde is the divine shade of choice, the hue of angels, saints, and sinners with rich husbands. You remember the paintings? Halos, gilded curls, and shimmering locks glowing like candlelight. In the medieval imagination, heaven must have looked like a hair salon with strict moral standards. You dip a strand cautiously into the bowl. The stench could strip wallpaper, if wallpaper had been invented yet. The woman beside you hums happily, her hair already crusted into stiff, golden ropes from past sessions. It takes many weeks, she assures you. The sun must finish what the urine begins. You make a mental note to thank modern chemistry next time you see it. Historians still argue whether this particular practice was common among noble women or more of a fringe curiosity. Some accounts point to Venice, where women were famous for their shimmering Venetian blonde hair. They would sit on rooftops wearing wide-brimmed hats with the crowns cut out so their hair could dangle through, soaking in sunlight and ammonia until it reached celestial hues. You imagine the skyline, a choir of women quietly sizzling under divine UV rays. As the day warms, you find yourself dragged into the courtyard with the others. The ritual begins, hair washed with lye soap, rinsed in vinegar, then saturated with the, special mixture. You sit in a row under the sun, everyone squinting and grimacing, pretending this is glamour. It's part of what makes beauty so powerful here. Pain disguised as ritual. A passing monk eyes the scene suspiciously. Vanity invites damnation, he warns. The woman next to you mutters, "Then damn me pretty." You like her immediately. For lighter hair, some add crushed saffron or chamomile to the mix, creating a faint golden tint. Others swear by mixtures of ashes and wine, or even diluted bleach from burned limestone. A fringe tidbit: in some regions, women used donkey milk for shine, claiming Cleopatra's ghost endorsed it. You briefly consider testing that theory, but the nearest donkey looks unamused. By noon, your scalp itches like betrayal. You'd kill for conditioner, or at least aloe, but the best they offer is rose oil. The scent almost hides the ammonia. Almost. A maid braids your damp hair loosely, muttering that men love the angelic color, but hate the smell. You shrug. Medieval beauty seems like a long-term commitment to disappointment. Later, you wander into the village, hair still steaming faintly. Men glance your way, not entirely sure if you're ethereal or cursed. Children point. Sun ghost. One yells, delighted. You smile weakly, wondering if divine radiance has ever smelled quite this agricultural. In the marketplace, a vendor sells hair tonics made from crushed almonds and honey. For shine, he promises, and the bees only sting a little. You decline, but admire his confidence. Nearby, another booth offers ribboned hairnets of fine silk. Calls, they're called. Blonde hair gleaming beneath a translucent net was the height of noble fashion. You imagine the effect. Light catching in gold, silk shimmering softly, and somewhere beneath it all, the faint aroma of ammonia. Historians still argue whether these golden ideals were inspired by religion or simply by proximity to Italy, where art and wealth idolized radiance. In Northern Europe, fair hair was linked to virtue and purity. In Southern courts, it hinted at wealth and exoticism. Either way, color carried meaning, and meaning carried weight. You return to your lodging as the sun sets, scalp tender, strands stiff. The woman from earlier inspects your hair critically, then nods. It begins, she whispers, as if watching a prophecy unfold. You're not sure whether to feel proud or terrified. That night, she shows you how to protect your hair. Wrap it in linen before sleeping. Never let it touch soot or grease. She applies a mixture of egg yolk and rose water, promising it will seal the light in. The smell is better, though your pillow may disagree. You stare at the dying fire, running your fingers through your roughened hair. The strands catch and pull. Texture of straw, color of aspiration. You think of how every culture invents its own form of torture for the sake of beauty. Today's chemical dyes and hot irons aren't so far removed from this rooftop alchemy. We just swapped the bucket for a bottle and added a nice label. Somewhere in the quiet, a soft laugh escapes you. If angels smell like this, you whisper, heaven must have great ventilation. Your host glances up, smiling faintly. You joke now, she says, but tomorrow you'll shine like the Virgin. You pull your linen wrap tighter, the air faintly buzzing with that mix of smoke, sweat, and strange devotion. And as you drift into uneasy sleep, your dreams shimmer gold, part sunlight, part insanity, all medieval glamour. The next morning, you wake up convinced you've swallowed a mouthful of dust and candle smoke. Your scalp feels like parchment, brittle and tight. But the women in the house are already bustling about with new beauty plans. You have hair of light now, one says approvingly. But your lips, they need color. You glance at your reflection in the burnished metal plate, pale, cracked, nearly invisible lips against a powdered face. Red, she decides, is life, and so begins your crash course in medieval lipstick. She leads you to a table covered in tiny jars and bowls, one filled with beeswax, another with crushed berries, and one with something that looks suspiciously like rust. For lasting color, she explains, we use vermilion, That word sounds romantic until you remember it's mercury sulfide. You hesitate. Just a touch, she adds, dipping a finger into the red dust, mixing it with vinegar and oil until it becomes a glistening paste. The scent is metallic, sharp, almost sweet. You dab it onto your lips and feel an immediate tingle. Not pleasant, but tolerable. Beautiful, she says, like rose petals. You try to smile, but the wax stiffens your lips into a polite grimace. In medieval courts, red lips signaled vitality and health, a subtle defiance against the death and disease that lingered everywhere. Yet the church, never one to miss a chance at moral policing, often condemned painted mouths as deceitful. The devil's invitation, one sermon called it. Historians still argue whether this condemnation reflected genuine fear of vanity or the church's discomfort with women controlling their image. Either way, your newly crimson mouth feels like rebellion, and maybe that's the point. A younger girl nearby grins at you, her teeth faintly pink from licking her own freshly painted lips. I make mine from crushed beetles, she boasts. Cochineal from Spain. Very expensive. She says it like someone flexing a designer handbag. You admire her confidence and the irony that her lips are stained with insect shells, while her smile sells it like luxury. Another woman offers a more rustic recipe. Red wine, mixed with ground brick dust. If you bleed, it means it's working, she says cheerfully. You decide to pass. The color craze doesn't stop at lips. Some dab a bit of rouge on their cheeks, cinnabar again, or sometimes crushed madder root mixed with fat. Others even tint their earlobes for that freshly alive glow. There's a strange logic here. In a world of pallor, any hint of warmth means you're not dying. Yet, a fringe tidbit you overhear. In certain Italian courts, women painted thin red lines down the middle of their lips to make them look smaller and more delicate. The mark of refinement, they called it. The effect, you realize, is less seductive and more permanent pout. Still, the trend spread like wildfire, proof that questionable fashion choices transcend centuries. As you leave the house, the morning light catches your lips in the metal mirror. They shimmer faintly, the mercury catching the glow like molten rubies. You look otherworldly. The compliment feels nice until you remember that otherworldly might soon be literal if the poison keeps seeping in. You wander through the marketplace, catching glances. Men nod politely. Women assess silently. Beauty here is both weapon and currency, and your lips have just become your calling card. One man selling apples winks and offers you a sample. You decline, unsure whether the smile he saw was charm or just wax cracking. Historians still argue whether cosmetics were universally accepted among noblewomen, or more of a quiet rebellion. Officially, virtue meant modesty, but unofficially, power often needed allure. Queens and courtesans alike learned that a well-painted face could tilt politics. You remember hearing that Elizabeth of York supposedly tinted her lips with crushed garnets mixed in honey. Perhaps she, too, learned that beauty could command rooms as effectively as armies. A sudden gust of wind blows dust onto your face. You taste grit, metal, and faint sweetness. The world around you hums with contradictions. Piety and vanity, devotion and deceit. You watch a woman cross herself before reapplying her rouge. God made roses red, she mutters. Why should I not be the same? Later, back at your quarters, You see the aftermath of the day's painting ritual: stained bowls, red-streaked cloths, and the faint shimmer of powder floating in the air. You dip a rag into warm water and wipe your lips clean. The color lingers stubbornly, like a confession that refuses absolution. Beneath the tint, your lips feel raw. The woman who taught you the mix offers another secret. To soften them, rub goose fat before bed. You nod, not entirely comforted. If they crack, she adds, rub salt and vinegar. It heals. You try not to laugh. Healing, apparently, is code for hurts more first. You fall into a rhythm over the next few days. Powder, rouge, paint, regret. By now, you can almost admire the craftsmanship of it all. These women aren't victims of vanity. They re-artists painting life onto faces that the world keeps trying to dull. The ritual becomes both armor and identity. One brushstroke at a time. A joke sneaks into your tired brain. Somewhere in a medieval village, someone's probably boasting, it's not poison, it's organic. You almost snort, but your lips are too stiff for humor. Night falls, and you wash your face with rose water and ash. The reflection staring back looks exhausted, but strangely radiant. You think of how beauty, even in its harshest form, can still be a kind of hope. When everything around you is rough, raw, and temporary, the act of decorating yourself feels like a small rebellion against decay. You stretch out on the straw mattress, mouth still tasting faintly of mercury and berries. Somewhere beyond the window, the moon glows pale, a perfect, dangerous white. You wonder briefly if it too would pass the medieval beauty test. Then your eyes close, and your dreams are painted in deep red, the color of desire, of defiance, and most of all, of survival. When you wake, the air smells faintly of ashes and egg, an ominous combination that can only mean one thing: high medieval contouring. Your hostess hums by the hearth, whisking egg whites in a small wooden bowl until they foam. For the glow, she explains, handing you a shard of mirror, polished to a dull shine. You must look as if the angels lit you from inside. You stare at the bowl, remembering yesterday's mercury lips, and wondering what fresh chemical flirtation this century has for you. She dips 2 fingers in the froth and smooths it across her cheeks. As it dries, her skin tightens into a porcelain sheen. It keeps wrinkles away, she says proudly. You're skeptical, but curiosity wins. The egg dries on your skin, pulling it taut until you feel halfway embalmed. When the candles catch the glossy surface of your face, it reflects faintly, like a saint's halo in cheap lighting. You understand the appeal. In a time before blush palettes and ring lights, shimmer equals status. But then she reaches for another jar, this one labeled with a red wax seal. She uncorks it, and a metallic tang fills the room. Cinnabar and mercury, she murmurs reverently, to shine bright as the Virgin's robe. You blink. We've learned nothing. She dots it along her cheekbones, and the effect is dazzling and slightly terrifying. Her skin gleams with an otherworldly glow, veins faint beneath the surface, beauty balanced precariously over poison. You recall that Queen Elizabeth II's famous Mask of Youth, centuries later, was made of similar stuff. Historians still argue whether those cosmetics were vanity or survival strategy, concealing smallpox scars, smoothing political perception. Either way, the shimmer had power. A fringe tidbit from the apothecary. Some nobles mixed crushed pearls into face paste for radiance, believing the moon's purity lived in the powder. He calls it the tears of Aphrodite. You call it budget annihilation. Each ounce could buy a small goat or a scandal, depending on the night. You step outside, skin crackling under the egg film. The morning sun kisses your mercury-glazed cheeks, and for a moment, you almost feel ethereal, until a fly lands and sticks. You flap your hand, dignity evaporating faster than your pores. The price of divinity, your hostess laughs. Later, in the market, you see other women glowing the same way. Faces stiff, eyes bright, moving carefully so as not to crack their alchemical armor. It's eerie, like walking among living statues. Yet when they smile, you glimpse pride. To look radiant in a world of grime and plague is a quiet miracle. Historians still argue whether men admired or feared such radiance. In some poems, pale shimmering skin symbolized heavenly purity. In others, it warned of sorcery. One troubadour wrote of a lady whose light devoured men's courage. You think, a bit of mercury can do that too. By midday, the tightness on your face becomes unbearable. The egg mask crumbles when you laugh. You duck into a shadowed alley, scraping flakes away with a linen cloth. Beneath, your skin feels smoother, also faintly raw. That's the glow leaving, you mutter, half amused. A young servant girl approaches with a bowl of something greenish. Try this instead, she whispers. Safer. Inside, mashed parsley, olive oil, and ground barley. She smears it on her own face proudly. It cools the humors. The smell is fresh, earthy, almost pleasant after the week of toxins. For a moment, you consider that maybe, just maybe, medieval beauty had its gentle side too. Then someone nearby snorts. That's peasant stuff, sneers a noblewoman, passing by with cheeks polished like marble. Real ladies glow by candlelight. You bite back a laugh. Modern translation, if it doesn't burn, it's not working. That evening, you're invited to supper at a manor. The hall flickers with torchlight, and every guest gleams as if dipped in moonlight. You sit between two courtiers, comparing recipes for complexion. I swear by mercury and vinegar, says one. It purges the bad humors. Nonsense, the other replies. Arsenic milk is gentler. You discreetly adjust your napkin, ready to bolt if anyone suggests a toast. Historians still argue whether these deadly ingredients were misunderstood or simply tolerated for the results. You suspect the latter. Humans have always been willing to trade years for beauty if it buys admiration today. After dinner, a jester jokes about ladies who glow like saints and die like stars. The laughter is polite. Nervous, you watch one woman's hand tremble as she sips her wine, perhaps from poison, perhaps from the effort of holding still beneath her painted shell. Either way, the illusion holds. Back in your room, you wash your face in cool water, watching the silver traces swirl down the basin. The reflection that emerges looks human again, tired, blotchy, but real. You breathe, relieved. Then your hostess peers in and gasps. You washed it off? She scolds. The glow must be fed daily. You mumble something about feeding your pores instead. She shakes her head, disappointed. Without shine, you'll fade like an old fresco. Maybe that's true, but fading sounds healthier than glowing from within due to mercury vapor. As the fire dies, you lie awake, imagining all those shimmering faces drifting through history. Queens, courtesans, nameless dreamers. each leaving behind a faint trail of beauty and toxins. Maybe the light wasn't just reflection, maybe it was the slow burn of devotion itself. You smile faintly at the thought. The air smells faintly of egg and regret. Tomorrow, someone will tell you about perfumes strong enough to mask sin. But for now, your skin breathes again, soft under the moonlight, blessedly dull. You wake to a different kind of perfume today, musky, sweet, and strangely smoky. The room glows gold with early sun, dust dancing lazily in the air. You stretch, the straw mattress sighing beneath you, and notice the woman at the hearth rubbing something oily along her wrists. For the smell, she says, without looking up. No one wants to reek of cabbage and penance. You sniff cautiously. It's not terrible. Spices, beeswax, maybe something floral, trying to fight through the layers of animal fat. She grins. It's civet and ambergris, she announces proudly. You nod as if you know what that means, until she explains. One comes from the glands of a small cat-like creature, the other from the intestines of a whale. So today's lesson is simple. Beauty smells like the inside of a medieval zoo. The body as canvas means you aren't just painting your face anymore. You re-sculpting, wrapping, disguising. A long linen chemise clings to your skin, followed by a stiff bodice that feels like someone's enthusiastic handshake around your ribs. Tighter, your helper insists, pulling the laces until your breath sounds like a confession. She beams. You look graceful. You look like an accordion. Historians still argue whether corset-like garments of this period were about support or suppression. The truth, judging by your inability to sit, is probably both. In the dim mirror, your waist looks slimmer, your posture saintly, your lungs optional. The woman powders your chest with rice flour, dabs lavender water on your pulse points, and whispers, "Now you are shaped for admiration." You wonder if admiration includes the ability to faint gracefully halfway through dinner. A fringe tidbit drifts from her chatter. Some women perfumed their undergarments by storing them with herbs or burning incense beneath the skirts while dressing. Carefully, one hopes, the practice was called fumigation for freshness. You picture someone accidentally setting themselves alight in pursuit of romance and have to bite your lip to stop laughing. Perfume isn't just vanity here, it's necessity. With open sewers and minimal bathing, everyone smells of something, and the goal is simply to outsmell the others. The wealthy favor musk, ambergris, and rose. The poor rely on mint, vinegar, or desperation. You dab a drop of civet on your neck and immediately regret it. The odor is somewhere between warm fur and forgotten laundry. Your host assures you it will mellow. After a few hours, she promises, you make a note to breathe shallowly. Until then, outside, the market thrums with trade. Stalls overflow with dried flowers, resin, oils. A perfumer lets you sniff a vial of attar of roses. Pure luxury, imported through Venetian merchants. It costs more than a farmer earns in a season. You close your eyes, inhale, and for a heartbeat, you forget the manure, the smoke, the sickness. No wonder people chase this illusion. It's the smell of escape. Historians still argue whether perfumes were seen as moral or decadent. Clergy denounced them as temptations, yet monasteries distilled essential oils for medicine. The line between sin and salvation was as thin as a drop of rose oil. In a tavern later, you overhear a minstrel joke. A lady's scent tells you her sins. Musk for lust, myrrh for pride, lavender for pretending she's innocent. The crowd laughs, but half the women still dab perfume behind their ears when they think no one's watching. Back at the manor, your hostess teaches you how to make your own blend. Melted beeswax, olive oil, crushed herbs. The smell fills the air, earthy, rich, alive. She calls it poor woman's ambergris. You call it finally breathable. Together, you pour the mixture into a small wooden pot. It hardens as it cools. A medieval solid perfume. You touch it to your neck and suddenly feel less like prey, more like a participant in the game. Then comes the tightening again. She laces your bodice for evening, this time adding padded rolls beneath the gown to emphasize hips and bust. The body must speak well, she says, even if the voice can't. You glance at your reflection, a strange hybrid of statue and soldier, every inch controlled, every curve calculated. Beauty, it seems, is both armor and advertisement. A maid passes, carrying a tray of fresh herbs, sage, thyme, and rosemary, to tuck into clothing seams. Keeps lice away, she murmurs. You grab a handful. Practicality finally meets perfume. As night falls, candles throw honey-colored light across the room. Women move like slow flames, their silks whispering, their perfumed shadows mingling in the air. It's dizzying, intoxicating. For a fleeting moment, you understand why people here obsess over scent and silhouette. In the darkness, smell and shape become identity. You take a deep breath, well, as deep as your bodice allows, and let the mix of civet, rose, and smoke wrap around you. Somewhere under it all is still your own scent, faint but stubborn. Maybe that's the quiet rebellion, smelling like yourself beneath the artifice. Before bed, the garments come off, layer by layer, each release a small salvation. The final cord loosens, and air floods your lungs like laughter. You slump in relief, while your hostess chuckles. Beauty, she says, is knowing how to endure until someone notices. You smile, half dazed, half wise to the joke now. The perfumes fade, the night grows still, and your heartbeat slows into something calm and human again. You wake before dawn, stiff from the corset, and still faintly smelling of civet and rosemary. The bed linen clings to your skin, and outside, the rain taps gently against the shutters, a soft rhythm that almost hides the sound of distant bells. Your hostess, already dressed, stands by the window holding a comb carved from bone. Today, she says solemnly, we purify the skin. You have a bad feeling about this. She gestures for you to sit, and the servants bring bowls of warm water, fine sand, and something that looks suspiciously like ashes. Beauty begins with removal, she says, and nothing shows refinement like smooth, hairless skin. You nod, uneasily. Modern razors haven't been invented yet, and the alternatives, plucking, burning, scraping, sound less like beauty treatments and more like medieval interrogation techniques. She dips a cloth in the sandy mixture and rubs it along her arms with slow, practiced strokes. The grains glisten faintly. Pumice and ashes, she explains, for softness. You run a tentative finger along your forearm, imagining the grit scouring away, not just hair, but dignity. She hands you your own bowl. Go on, she says, smiling sweetly. Pain means purity. Historians still argue whether medieval women truly obsessed over hair removal, or if such rituals were exaggerated by later moralists. Some sources praise smooth flesh as the marble of virtue, while others imply it was only for nobles with too much time and too many mirrors. But whether myth or fashion, you're about to find out firsthand. You rub the mixture gently at first, then a bit harder. The sensation is halfway between exfoliation and regret. Don't be shy. Your hostess laughs. You'll thank me when your skin gleams like alabaster. You're pretty sure alabaster never itched this much. A fringe tidbit from the corner of the room. One servant whispers about cat as blood depilatories, a concoction supposedly boiled from animal fat, lime, and powdered bones. Burns the hair away, she says proudly. You stare, horrified, then glance down at your gritty paste and decide you're perfectly fine with pumice. Thanks. By mid-morning, your arms are pink and your patience thin. She leads you to a small copper mirror and gestures proudly. See? Soft as a cherub. You squint. You look like a cherub that lost a fight with a brick. But she's right. The skin does feel smooth. Painfully smooth. The next ordeal involves the face. A new mixture appears. This time honey, vinegar, and crushed beans. To brighten and cleanse, she says, spreading it over your cheeks. The smell is sharp, but not unpleasant. You remember that in the absence of soap, many used legumes and grains as natural scrubs. Even physicians like Trotula of Salerno wrote beauty treatises suggesting such recipes, blending medicine and vanity with surprising precision. Historians still argue whether Trotula herself existed as a single woman or a collective of authors under one name. Either way, her Secrets of Women text offered one of the first recorded medieval skincare guides. Proof that even then, people chase radiance with scientific ambition. As the mixture dries, your hostess hums and begins threading her eyebrows with a fine string. You watch, fascinated and horrified, as she twirls it, catching each hair with swift flicks. To open the gaze, she explains, a lady must look awake, even when she isn't. You can relate. You try it yourself and immediately yelp. You'll get used to it, she says, unconcerned. You doubt that deeply. By noon, your skin glows, your eyebrows are smaller but uneven, and your self-esteem is considering early retirement. The maid brings rose water to rinse the last traces of paste. It cools the sting, and for the first time today, you sigh in relief. Lunch consists of bread, cheese, and unsolicited skincare advice. Eat parsley for clear skin, one woman insists. Bathe in goat milk, says another. Sleep facing east, adds a third. You nod politely, filing each under things I will never attempt again. But as the afternoon light filters through the shutters, you realize something strange. You do look different. Softer, clearer, less travel-worn. There's an almost holy glow in the way the light grazes your newly scoured skin. Maybe there's truth hidden in the madness after all. Then the hostess claps her hands. Now, for the finishing touch, she declares, producing a small clay pot. Inside is a pale cream that smells faintly of almonds. Cold cream, she says proudly, our secret armor. The recipe, olive oil, beeswax, and rosewater, feels surprisingly modern. You smooth it over your skin and nearly melt. It's soothing, cool, a balm after the storm. Historians still argue whether such early creams came from Arab alchemical traditions or homegrown experiments. Either way, the formula survives centuries later with almost no change. Some things, apparently, medieval people got exactly right. You spend the evening wandering the garden, feeling the air touch your clean skin. The rain has stopped, leaving the earth smelling sweet and alive. Flowers droop under droplets, their scent stronger now. Natural perfume, unbottled and honest. You breathe it in, thinking maybe beauty doesn't have to hurt all the time. A small child runs past, laughing, her face streaked with mud. Her mother calls out, horrified, "Don't ruin your complexion." You grin to yourself. Some habits, it seems, are immortal. Later, in the quiet of your chamber, you catch your reflection in a basin of water. The candlelight trembles across your smooth skin. You look both foreign and familiar, half pilgrim, half participant in this strange theater of perfection. And just before sleep takes you, a thought drifts in like a lullaby. Every era has its rituals, its potions, its painful little promises. But maybe the pursuit itself, the yearning to shine, to be seen, is what makes people beautiful. Even when they don't survive the recipe, the morning greets you with the faint clang of church bells and the distant hum of a marketplace awakening. You stretch beneath a linen sheet that smells faintly of beeswax and lavender, your newly polished skin prickling at the cool air. You think you might actually survive this century until your hostess appears with a length of ribbon and a knowing smile. "Today," she says, "we crown the head." You glance at the mirror. Your hair, still recovering from its recent sun urine trauma, hangs limp and uneven, the color a dubious mix between gold and despair. She tuts sympathetically, then opens a small chest filled with treasures, pins, ribbons, braids of false hair, and something that looks like a miniature birdcage. "No lady goes bareheaded," she explains. "The soul might escape." You raise an eyebrow. She doesn't seem to be joking. The birdcage turns out to be a hennin, the conical headpiece made famous by fairy tale illustrations. Tall and elegant, sometimes trailing a delicate veil. Hers is modest, but she whispers tales of noble women whose hennins reached 3 feet high, balanced precariously as they glided through court. Historians still argue whether such heights were real or artistic exaggeration. Either way, you imagine ducking through doorways like a medieval giraffe and decide moderation has its perks. She winds your hair into tight braids, wrapping them around your head like a crown base. "It must be firm," she says, "so your virtue stays in place." You're pretty sure virtue isn't anchored by hairpins, but it feels safer not to argue. A fringe tidbit: in some regions, unmarried girls wore their hair loose as a sign of purity, while married women bound it tightly or hid it beneath veils. Hair, it seems, spoke louder than words about one's station and moral standing. You suddenly feel grateful. Modern dating profiles don't include headgear codes. Your hostess fastens the hennin with bone pins. It feels absurdly heavy, and when she drapes the translucent veil over it, your world turns gauzy. "Perfect," she sighs. "Now you look respectable." You test a curtsy and nearly topple. She applauds anyway. As you follow her through the village, heads turn, not just out of admiration, but caution. A tall headdress signals both wealth and distance, a quiet declaration of "look but don't touch." You catch your reflection in a puddle, a silhouette half queen, half wind turbine. The effect is both ridiculous and regal. You stop at a merchant's booth, selling silk ribbons dyed with saffron and woad. "Color carries meaning," your hostess explains, fingering the fabrics. "Blue for loyalty, red for passion, green for youth." She winks. "Choose wisely." You pick blue, mostly because red looks dangerous and green reminds you of herbs and regret. Historians still argue whether color codes were universally understood or varied by region. But one thing's clear. In a world without Instagram filters, dye was the language of the body. A splash of rare pigment could tell a story wealth alone couldn't buy. The merchant also sells pomanders, small metal spheres filled with herbs or scented wax, meant to dangle from belts or hats to mask unpleasant odors. Your hostess insists you wear one to keep the humors balanced. You suspect the real purpose is to keep bystanders conscious. The scent, cloves, nutmeg, and orange peel, swirls through the air, cutting through the tang of wet cobblestone. A sudden gust nearly topples your hennin. You grab it just in time, earning laughter from a group of boys chasing geese. Witch's Tower, one yells. You grin and bow dramatically. If they only knew how much engineering went into this balancing act. Later, inside the chapel, the effect of the headdress changes entirely. The candlelight filters through your veil, painting your vision in soft gold. You sit beside your hostess, both of you framed in ethereal halos of fabric. In this stillness, the hennin no longer feels ridiculous. It feels sacred. Beauty becomes ceremony. Adornment becomes devotion. You notice how other women's veils differ. Some drape to the shoulders, others cascade to the floor, each fold deliberate. A widow's veil is dark, her grief visible in the fabric's weight. A bride's veil glows like a sunrise. You think of how, centuries later, veils will still carry these meanings. Some symbols never fade. They just change material. Historians still argue whether medieval women found empowerment in these elaborate dress codes or were bound literally and socially by them. Watching them now, you suspect it's both. Within constraint, they craft identity. Within rules, they build rebellion, just subtle enough to survive. After prayers, you walk through the cloister garden. The hennin sways with each step, and your veil flutters like a private wind. You imagine all the hands that designed, stitched, and starched such absurd beauty. Maybe every culture needs its own form of inconvenience to prove devotion, whether to God, fashion, or reputation. Your hostess adjusts your veil tenderly. Keep it on, she says. It changes how people look at you. You nod, though you're starting to feel the ache in your neck. Still, she's right. Strangers meet your eyes differently now, with deference, curiosity, even envy. The hat isn't just decoration. It's a portable hierarchy. As dusk settles, you return home and finally remove the contraption. The release is euphoric. Your scalp tingles, your hair tumbles free, and your reflection softens. Beneath the layers of silk and starch, you look human again. Rumpled, tired, a little triumphant. Your hostess places the hennin carefully back in its chest, as if tucking away a relic. Beauty, she murmurs, is the art of remembering your place until you decide to move it. You smile at that. Maybe she understands more rebellion than she lets on. The night deepens, and you lie awake, listening to rain whisper against the shutters, your mind replaying the shimmer of veils, the weight of symbols, the quiet power of ornament. For the first time, you feel the strange comfort of belonging in this brutal world of beauty. A fragile tower built of silk, sweat, and self-control. You wake to sunlight prying through the shutters, slicing the room into ribbons of gold and shadow. Your scalp still aches faintly from the hennin ordeal. But before you can savor the calm, your hostess bursts in with an armful of fabrics, velvet, brocade, and linen, spilling like liquid color across the bed. Today, she says with a grin, we dress to survive judgment. You blink. Judgment? She nods. The market, the men, the church. Take your pick. Clothing in this world is more than warmth. It's declaration. Every hemline, every stitch, every forbidden hue whispers status, morality, and sometimes defiance. You remember yesterday's colors. Blue for loyalty, red for passion, green for youth, and realize that in the Middle Ages, your outfit could get you admired, fined, or burned, depending on who's watching. The hostess unfolds a gown of heavy crimson velvet trimmed with fur. It glows like blood in the sunlight. Only the noble may wear this, she says. But no one asks too loudly in winter. You reach for it hesitantly, feeling the dense weight of forbidden luxury. Historians still argue whether medieval sumptuary laws, those endless lists of who could wear what, were about maintaining class order or simply about enforcing envy. Kings wanted their courtiers rich, but not too rich. The church wanted piety, but not poverty. It was a delicate dance between showing grace and showing off. She laces you in, each tug pulling you tighter into your new identity. Now you look like a lady, she says approvingly. You glance in the mirror. Your reflection stares back, tall, regal, suffocating slightly. And what if someone notices I shouldn't wear this? You ask. She shrugs. Then you smile. Confidence is its own disguise. A fringe tidbit. Certain fabrics carried spiritual implications. Linen, spun from flax, symbolized purity, and was favored for undergarments. Wool signified humility, while silk and velvet shimmered with sin. Monks debated whether owning too many colors corrupted the soul. Tailors simply charged extra for gold thread. You step outside, the gown sweeping the dirt like a royal mop. The villagers stare, some with admiration, some with resentment. A boy mutters, "Must be a duke's wife." You're tempted to curtsy, ironically, but the skirt weighs too much for humor. Your hostess walks beside you proudly, dressed in modest brown wool. Every woman wears armor, she says quietly. Yours just happens to sparkle. At the market, you pass merchants hawking ribbons, lace, and second-hand garments, tokens of aspiration. A young girl eyes your sleeves, whispering, "If I had those, I'd never feel cold again." You wonder if she means the fabric or the power it implies. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws actually worked. Many records suggest people ignored them constantly, finding loopholes or bribing inspectors. The real punishment came from gossip, social exile, not legal fines. Reputation, after all, was the ultimate currency. You pause before a stall selling modesty patches, small jeweled badges to cover low necklines. Fashionable decency, the vendor proclaims proudly. You suppress a laugh. Medieval morality apparently came with accessories. By midday, you're sweating. Velvet traps heat with vengeful efficiency, and fur itches like penance. The gown feels less like luxury and more like endurance training. You glance enviously at peasants in simple linen tunics, cool and free. Do you ever miss comfort? You ask your hostess. She smiles sadly. Comfort doesn't impress anyone. She's not wrong. In the castle courtyard later, noblewomen float by in gowns of silk, so long they require servants to carry the trains. Their sleeves hang like banners, embroidered with scenes of saints and scandals. You overhear whispers. Her husband's silk comes from Florence. That trim is from the East. Did you see her pearls? Every detail is both statement and scandal. A lady offers you wine and compliments your gown. It's daring, she says, and dangerous. You raise an eyebrow. dangerous. She leans closer. If you dress above your station, people assume you sleep above it too. You swallow your reply with the wine. It burns going down. Historians still argue whether women used fashion as rebellion or simply as survival strategy. The line between defiance and decorum was razor thin, yet many danced on it daily, smiling sweetly as they broke rules stitch by stitch. That night, back in your room, you peel off the gown. The velvet sighs as it falls, heavy as guilt. Underneath, your chemise clings damply to your skin. You feel oddly relieved, as though shedding not just fabric, but expectation. The mirror shows someone both softened and sharpened by the day's performance. Your hostess sits by the fire, mending a tear in her sleeve. Do you understand now? She asks, without looking up. You nod slowly. Beauty isn't just for admiration, you say. It's armor, camouflage, confession. She smiles faintly. Exactly. And sometimes it's punishment. A faint breeze sneaks through the shutter, fluttering the hem of your discarded gown. The fur ripples in the candlelight, a ghost of elegance too heavy to wear forever. You stretch your arms, feeling your ribs expand freely for the first time in hours. Outside, the bells toll for evening prayers. You wonder how many people tonight will kneel in silks forbidden by law, whispering apologies to a God who surely has better things to do than check thread counts. You smile, amused, exhausted, and strangely enlightened. Beauty, you decide, isn't just brutal, it's bureaucratic. And in the Middle Ages, even holiness had a dress code. The morning air feels heavier now, thick with the smell of hearth smoke and damp wool. Somewhere outside, church bells echo again, slower this time, mournful. You pull the linen blanket tighter around yourself, only to notice your hostess already awake, sitting by the window with a basket of strange tools laid out like surgical instruments. Tweezers, little hooks, tiny scissors, and something that looks like a candle with a feather attached. Time to perfect what the Lord forgot, she says cheerfully. You blink. You mean makeup? She laughs softly. Closer to maintenance. She gestures for you to sit. We begin with the ears. You hesitate, but obey. She warms a bit of wax from the candle and drips it gently into your ear. Softens the filth, she says. When she pulls it out a moment later, it's horrifyingly effective. Men never see it, she adds, but angels do. You make a mental note to clean more thoroughly in future centuries. Next comes the nose, vinegar dabbed on a linen cloth to refine the scent. You sneeze violently. She laughs again, undeterred. Good sign, she says. Means your humors are waking. Historians still argue whether medieval grooming rituals were daily acts or rare indulgences reserved for feast days. Some records show elaborate bathhouses with scented oils and steam. Others insist people feared bathing, believing it weakened the body. Truth, as usual, probably soaked somewhere in between. Today, you get the deluxe version. The servants bring a shallow tub lined with cloth. The water smells faintly of thyme and chamomile. You may enter, she says with mock solemnity. You sink in cautiously. The warmth seeps into your aching muscles, and for a moment, you forget the century. It's peaceful, until she hands you a rough bundle of herbs, tied together. Soapwort, she says. It lathers if you pray hard enough. You scrub. It does lather, barely, though the prayer part might be doing most of the work. A fringe tidbit. In some cities, bathhouses doubled as social clubs. Men and women, chatting, eating. even signing contracts in the steam. Later, moralists condemned them as dens of sin, but for a while, they were the heart of urban hygiene. You imagine gossip swirling like vapor, secrets traded in bubbles. Back here, the spa experience continues. After the bath, your hostess pours vinegar mixed with herbs over your hair as a final rinse keeps lice humble. She explains. You shudder, remembering that humility's price can itch. Then comes the teeth. She hands you a small stick of dried rosemary. Chew, she instructs. You do, grimacing at the bitterness. It sweetens the breath, she says proudly. You glance toward a small pot of powder, crushed charcoal mixed with salt. For whitening, she adds. You give it a cautious try, brushing with a bit of linen. It's gritty, but strangely refreshing. Historians still argue whether medieval people really had bad teeth. Archaeological evidence often shows surprisingly good dental health among peasants, probably thanks to less sugar and more chewing. So maybe the jokes about toothless serfs are just propaganda from the later, candy-eating generations. After the bath, your hostess oils your skin with almond and rose. Protection, she says, against cold and against envy. You inhale deeply, the smell is heavenly, and for once, not made of animal glands. She sits beside you, running a comb through her own hair. Beauty isn't for men, she says suddenly. It's for control. When the world tells you your body belongs to others, you make it your own with ritual. You nod slowly. The thought settles in your chest, warm and quiet. Outside, a rooster crows late. The sun spills through the window, catching the steam rising from the bath water. You feel strangely reborn, scrubbed of not just dirt, but the layers of performance that came with those gowns and paints. Then she adds, almost wistfully, though if a knight notices, that doesn't hurt either. You both laugh, the sound light and human, amid all this historical absurdity. By midday, the room smells of herbs and warmth. A neighbor stops by, offering a pouch of powdered alum. For tightening the skin, she says proudly. Your hostess accepts it with reverence. It also works on wounds, she whispers to you later. Sometimes we can't tell the difference. You test a dab. It stings like regret. But once it dries, your skin feels smoother. In a mirror, you catch a faint shimmer of health that looks almost modern. Historians still argue whether such beautifying habits trickled down to commoners or stayed locked in the noble chambers. But here, watching women trade tips across class lines like recipes, you suspect beauty was always more democratic than history admits. Everyone, rich or poor, wanted to feel presentable to the world, to themselves, to God. Evening settles, slow and golden. You sit by the fire, your hair drying into soft waves. The room hums with small sounds, combs through hair, quiet laughter, the crackle of logs. It's a rare, peaceful kind of vanity, one that feels almost sacred. You glance at your hostess. Her hands are rough, her face lined, but her eyes gleam with the satisfaction of control. For all the pain, the plucking, the vinegar, this quiet mastery feels beautiful in a way no powdered poison ever could. As you drift toward sleep, you realize something simple and ancient. Clean feels like power, and in a world where beauty often meant suffering, maybe that was the real miracle. You wake to a world dusted white. Snow covers the fields outside your window, muffling the usual clatter of carts and church bells. The air seeps through the cracks, sharp as glass, You pull the blanket tighter, only to find your hostess already bustling about the hearth, layering on wool skirts and muttering something about winter vanity. You thought the cold might give beauty a break. You were wrong. Pale is divine, she declares, stoking the fire. But frostbite is not. She hands you a small pot of goose fat mixed with beeswax. Rub it on your cheeks, keeps the cold out and the glow in. You obey, though the texture feels suspiciously like lard. There, she says, satisfied. Now you look alive enough to suffer properly. Historians still argue whether goose fat really protected skin or was just superstition. But in a world without central heating or moisturizers, it's easy to see why people clung to it, literally. The sheen it leaves makes you glimmer faintly in the candlelight. Somewhere between angelic and greasy, you glance out the window. Snowflakes drift lazily over the thatched roofs, and from a distance, everything looks pure, softened. But inside, vanity never sleeps. The hostess unwraps a small mirror, its polished metal surface clouded with age. Time for winter color, she says, holding up a tiny pot of rouge. You freeze. Isn't that Mercury again? She grins. No, no. This one's harmless. Mostly crushed cochineal. Little red beetles from faraway lands. The color of saints' lips. She dabs it on your cheeks. And for a moment, you forget the cruelty of the season. Warmth blooms across your skin. A counterfeit summer. Historians still argue whether medieval women used imported cochineal or local plant dyes for rouge. Trade routes were fickle, and recipes changed with the tides. Still, the desire remained constant, to trick winter, to summon color when the world went gray. You and your hostess step outside, cloaked in layers of wool and fur. The snow squeaks beneath your boots. Every breath hangs visible in the air, turning life itself into steam. Around the square, people bustle. Men in heavy cloaks, women in veils dusted white, everyone pretending not to shiver. A fringe tidbit. Some noble women carried small glass spheres filled with warm water, clutching them in their sleeves to keep their fingers supple. They called them courtesy apples. You spot one now, a lady holding hers delicately, steam fogging her veil. Never show red hands, she tells her maid. It ruins the illusion. You tuck your own frozen fingers deeper into your sleeves. At the market, the scent of roasting chestnuts mingles with cold iron and wet wool. Vendors sell everything from woolen gloves to jars of scented oil. You pause at a stall displaying candles shaped like saints. They protect the complexion, the merchant insists. Burn one each night, and your face will never crack. You're tempted to buy one just to test the theology. Historians still argue whether winter beauty rituals were spiritual or purely practical. Some scholars point to religious paintings, Madonnas with snow-pale skin and serene expressions, as proof of a divine aesthetic. Others insist it was just frostbite, glamorized. You suspect the truth is simpler. When the world froze, people needed beauty as proof that warmth would return. By noon, the snow thickens. You follow your hostess to a bathhouse near the edge of town, a rare luxury in winter. Inside, steam curls around wooden beams, blurring bodies into silhouettes. The heat is overwhelming after the cold. You sink into the water, sighing. Careful, she warns. Too long in warmth weakens the blood. You nod, though you don't plan to move anytime soon. Around you, women gossip in low voices. One boasts of a snow mask made of milk and flour. Another swears by melted wax. rubbed on her feet before bed. You listen, fascinated, half amused. Even in this brutal age, self-care finds its way into conversation like an old friend. A young woman asks how you keep your skin so smooth. You almost laugh. If only she knew about the sand scrubs, mercury, and urine baths that got you here. Luck, you say, and good lighting. The room bursts into laughter. The sound echoes off the wet walls, warm as the steam. For a brief, impossible moment, the centuries dissolve. You could be anywhere. A spa, a salon, a whispered exchange of beauty secrets across time. Later, as dusk settles, you walk home through the snow, your breath glowing gold in torchlight. The rouge still clings to your cheeks, bright against the pale world. You catch your reflection in a frozen puddle, lips flushed, eyes bright, hair framed in frost. You almost look enchanted. Your hostess nudges you. See? The cold flatters the faithful. You grin. And freezes the foolish. Back inside, she hangs your cloak by the fire and hands you a cup of spiced wine. The heat seeps into your fingers, the scent of cinnamon curling through the air. Beauty, she says softly, isn't always about showing off. Sometimes it's just proof you're still alive. You sit together in companionable silence, watching the fire lick the darkness. Outside, the snow falls endlessly, soft, relentless, erasing footprints before dawn. You know tomorrow will bring another ritual, another absurd demand from this beautiful, merciless world. But tonight, you let the warmth sink deep, your reflection glowing faintly in the firelight, like something halfway between sinner and saint. And for once, you don't mind the illusion. By morning, the snow has melted into mud, and with the thaw comes the faint, sour smell of spring. You'd expect relief. After all, winter nearly turned you into a popsicle. But the new season brings new torments. Your hostess greets you with a mischievous glint. It's fasting time, she says. For the soul, yes, but the face too. You groan, already missing the goose fat. During Lent, beauty becomes both forbidden fruit and spiritual sport. No bright pigments, no perfumes, no indulgent oils, at least not publicly. You follow her through the narrow lanes to church, where villagers shuffle in drab humility. Yet, even under their veils, you catch glimmers of rebellion. Cheeks faintly tinted, hair suspiciously shiny. Hypocrisy never looked so pious. Historians still argue whether Lent truly dampened the beauty trade or merely drove it underground. Some suggest cosmetics sales rose during these months. Clandestine powders hidden in rosary cases, rouges disguised as holy balm. The church preached modesty, but humanity, ever inventive, found loopholes. At home, your hostess pulls out a jar labeled ash milk. You stare. For the skin, she explains, smearing gray paste across your cheeks. Cleanses sins and impurities. Mostly sins. You smell faintly, like a bonfire confession. And after? You ask. She smiles slyly. After, we rinse with rose water. God won't mind a little balance. The logic makes medieval sense. Everything is penance and pleasure, just not at the same time. Outside, the fields wake in shades of green. Farmers plow, birds return, and suddenly, beauty feels fragile again, vulnerable to sun and sweat. The hostess warns you of freckles. Tiny devils, she calls them, proof of lazy shade seeking. She hands you a veil so thick, you might as well be a ghost. Better pale than spotted. A fringe tidbit. Some women soaked their veils in lead acetate solution, believing it reflected sunlight. It did, technically, and also poisoned them slowly. The church, ever practical, never banned it. Vanity and martyrdom made convenient bedfellows. You walk through the town veiled like a penitent, catching half smiles from men who apparently find mystery appealing. Your hostess chuckles. See, the less they see, the more they imagine. She's not wrong. Medieval fashion understood suspense long before Instagram filters. In the square, a friar preaches against vanity. Paint is pride, he shouts. God gave you a face. Wear it humbly. The women exchange knowing looks. One whispers, easy for him. He's bald. You suppress a laugh. The friar's sermon fades into the usual rhythm of warnings. Paint leads to lust, lust to sin, sin to hell. Yet when he finishes, half the women slip away toward a merchant selling holy ointment. The label glitters with gold leaf. Historians still argue whether these contradictions were hypocrisy or simple survival. Medieval life was full of paradox. Chastity alongside courtly love, fasting alongside feasting, purity alongside perfume. Beauty lived in those gray zones, whispering, maybe both. Back home, your hostess reveals her secret stash, a wooden box under the floorboards. Inside, dried herbs, ground pigments, even a little gold dust. Just for festival days, she says, though her smirk suggests otherwise. She sprinkles a pinch of gold onto her eyelids. It catches the firelight, shimmering like sin in slow motion. Do you think God minds? She asks. You smile. If he made gold, he probably approves. For a moment, you sit together in quiet defiance. The world outside may demand contrition, but inside this small room, beauty still hums like a forbidden prayer. Evening falls with the smell of wet earth and wood smoke. You walk to the river to rinse your face, your reflection rippling in the muddy water, gray from ash, bright from defiance. You remember the snow pallor, the hennin, the velvet gowns, each version of you layered over the next like a palimpsest of survival. A group of girls nearby giggle as they wash their hair with beer. For shine, one insists. Another adds, and courage. You decide to believe both. A third warns, don't tell Father Gregory. He'll say it's vanity. The first replies, he already thinks we're wicked for existing. You can't help but laugh. Some struggles, it seems, never expire. Back at the cottage, your hostess hums a hymn while trimming her nails with a small knife. Cleanliness, she says softly, is a kind of prayer. Beauty, if done right, is gratitude. You consider that. The idea that grooming, painting, and pampering aren't rebellion but reverence. Maybe survival itself is worship. Historians still argue whether medieval women saw self-adornment as sin or devotion. Some texts describe Mary Magdalene as both penitent and perfumed, a contradiction the church never resolved. Perhaps that's why beauty endures. It refuses to choose sides. You slip beneath the linen sheets, still faintly smelling of ash and rose water. Outside, frogs croak in the thawing marsh. The sound rhythmic, hypnotic. Your skin tingles from the strange pace, half clean, half condemned. But in this moment, you feel oddly serene. You whisper to yourself, let them call it vanity. I'll call it survival. And in the soft dark, as the first stars bloom over the thatched roofs, you realize every rule, every sermon, every secret potion, none of it could ever cage the human desire to feel beautiful, if only for a heartbeat. By now, you've endured mercury blushes, lead powders, and enough strange potions to qualify as a walking apothecary. But just when you think the medieval beauty gauntlet has thrown its worst at you, your hostess decides it's time for permanent refinement. The phrase makes you uneasy. Anything permanent in this century tends to involve fire, needles, or prayer. She opens a carved chest with a reverence normally reserved for relics. Inside gleam small iron tools, some curved, some sharpened to delicate points. You take a cautious step back. You're not about to perform dentistry again, are you? You ask. She chuckles. No, no. This is artistry. Today we reshape the self. You sit hesitantly by the hearth as she explains. Your eyebrows, she says, should speak before you do. Apparently, the ideal medieval brow was high, rounded, and sparse, arched like the Virgin's halo. Pluck them too little, and you look coarse. Pluck them too much, and you look cursed. You consider your reflection. So basically, pluck them until you cry? She grins. Now you understand beauty. She begins. The tweezers bite. You wince. Each hair feels like a confession. They say it opens the mind. She murmurs soothingly. Lets the spirit rise. You're not sure if your spirit's rising or leaving. Historians still argue whether the medieval brow craze began with noblewomen or painters. In portraits of the period, foreheads stretch wide and serene, as if the artists measured beauty in inches of exposed skin. Some even plucked the entire hairline to appear more angelic. You glance toward a nearby knife and think maybe angels are overrated. A fringe tidbit: in some regions, women applied vinegar mixed with walnut shells to thin their hairlines chemically. It burned like holy fire, but was praised for its heavenly effect. You suspect hell might look suspiciously similar. When she finishes, your reflection startles you. The forehead is vast, luminous, almost architectural. Now, your hostess says proudly, you look like you understand theology. You touch your scalp gingerly, half expecting echoes, but the ritual isn't done. Next, she announces, we sculpt the hands. She brings out a bowl of lemon water and salt. Scrub, she orders. A lady's hands tell her secrets. You obey, feeling the sting of salt in tiny cuts. Pain purifies, she says serenely. You mutter, so does soap, but she pretends not to hear. Historians still argue whether medieval hand-whitening rituals were about class or cleanliness. Some say pale hands proved you didn't toil in the sun. Others claim it was simply fashion. Either way, the result is the same: bleached knuckles, soft palms, and the faint scent of lemons that somehow traveled from distant Sicily to your fingertips. She hands you a ring, plain bronze, yet heavy. Every mark of beauty must be anchored, she says cryptically. You slip it on, feeling the metal warm to your skin. Later that afternoon, a knock echoes through the door. A peddler stands outside, his cart brimming with curiosities. Perfumes from the east, tinted oils, and something new, a vial labeled aqua vitae. It burns away blemishes, he promises. Your hostess gasps. Distilled spirit. She looks scandalized and intrigued all at once. You sniff the bottle. It smells like fire and regret. You drink it? You ask. Or wear it? The peddler shrugs. Both, if you're brave. Historians still argue whether aqua vitae was used more for medicine or vanity. Early recipes describe it as the water of life, but it likely shortened many instead. Still, people swore by its purifying sting. You dab a drop on your cheek. It burns like ambition. That night, you find yourself seated by candlelight, tracing the unfamiliar planes of your new reflection. The plucked brows, the pale hands, the faint scent of spirit lingering in the air. You look elevated, maybe, or haunted. The line between the two blurs easily here. Your hostess studies you thoughtfully. There's a reason they call it refinement, she says. You remove and remove until only the essence remains. You glance down at your sore hands and tender forehead, and if you remove too much, she smiles sadly. Then you become legend. The fire crackles. Shadows stretch long across the floor, like veils of time. You remember the henna, the lead powder, the goose fat, the ash paste, all these layers of suffering disguised as self-improvement. And now, you're sitting in the dark, slightly drunk on aqua vitae, contemplating your scalp's theological width. It's almost funny. You chuckle softly. You know, you tell her, in my century, we still do this. Different tool. Same madness. She raises an eyebrow. Then perhaps your century isn't as new as it thinks. Outside, the wind howls through the shutters. Somewhere in the village, a dog barks. Your hostess lowers the candle's flame and says gently, tomorrow, you'll learn how to move like a lady. Beauty isn't just seen, it's performed. You groan. So now I need choreography too? She laughs. Always. Grace is the final illusion. As you drift towards sleep, your fingers trace the bronze ring, cool against your skin. It feels like a promise, or a warning. You're not sure which. In the dim light, you realize that beauty here is less about adornment and more about endurance, an act of control in a world built to control you. Every plucked hair, every burn, every quiet act of vanity whispers the same rebellion. I exist, and I choose how. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most brutal, beautiful rule of all. The morning light slips through the shutters, pale and forgiving, as if the sun itself has decided to take pity on you. You stretch, every inch of you aware of the lingering sting from yesterday's refinement. Your forehead feels newly enormous. Your hands still smell faintly of lemons and martyrdom. But before you can even contemplate staying in bed, your hostess appears in the doorway, armed with a wooden rod and the kind of grin that never means good news. Time to walk like a lady, she says. You sit up slowly. I already walk. She shakes her head. No, you exist. That's not the same thing. She sweeps the rod through the air like a conductor. In this world, she says, beauty doesn't end at the face. It's how you move, how you carry silence, how you enter a room without breaking it. You beginning to suspect this is less of a beauty rule and more of a medieval Jedi training session. The lesson begins in the courtyard, slick with dew and judgment. She balances a small wooden board on your head. For posture, she explains. Spine straight, steps small, hips steady. You take a step. The board wobbles. She sighs. Again. Historians still argue whether noble women truly trained with posture boards, or whether that's an invention of later romantic painters. But contemporary texts do emphasize controlled grace, describing women who glided as if born by angels. You, on the other hand, look more like a startled heron, a fringe tidbit. Some etiquette manuals warned women never to swing their arms when walking. It was considered vulgar, too suggestive of labor. Instead, hands were to rest lightly at the waist or cradle a rosary, reminding everyone that piety and posture go hand in hand. You attempt this, but your rosary slips into the mud. The angels are definitely not carrying you today. Balance, your hostess insists, setting the board back in place. Imagine a crown instead. You try again, moving slower this time. There's a strange serenity in the precision, the rhythm of measured steps, the quiet focus on control. For a fleeting moment, you feel almost graceful until a chicken struts across your path and you lurch sideways to avoid it. The board crashes down. Your hostess sighs deeply. Royalty doesn't dodge poultry, she says. By midday, she adds books to your training. Literally, you now balance 2 volumes of saints' lives on your shoulders while holding a lit candle in one hand. Every movement must be deliberate, she instructs. Even your stillness should shimmer. You're sweating by the third round, the candle tilting dangerously close to your veil. This seems unsafe, you manage. She smiles serenely. Beauty always is. Historians still argue whether this walking discipline was about elegance or control. Some scholars call it a form of social choreography, a way to reinforce hierarchy through movement. A noblewoman's poise separated her from peasants just as clearly as her silk gown did. In this world, how you moved could be as political as what you wore. When the lesson finally ends, you collapse onto a bench, breathless. Your hostess hands you a cup of watered wine. You did well, she says kindly, almost convincing. You groan. I'd rather fight a dragon. She chuckles. Oh, we all fight dragons, dear. Ours just happen to be invisible. That evening, she takes you to the great hall for a feast. The final test. Candles flicker, casting warm halos over stone and velvet. Musicians play, laughter hums, and every guest seems born, knowing how to shimmer without shining too brightly. You take your seat carefully, aware of every muscle, every gesture. The memory of the board on your head lingers like a phantom crown. Across the table, a knight compliments your poise. You carry yourself like a queen, he says. You smile, though your neck aches. I had excellent torture, you reply. He laughs, not quite catching your meaning. Historians still argue whether medieval women enjoyed these performances or merely endured them. Letters from the period suggest both, a dance between oppression and artistry. Some reveled in their mastery of appearance, others counted the cost in bruises and breath. The night deepens, the music slows. You sip your wine, feeling the ache fade into a strange calm. Around you, beauty glows, not just in faces, but in gestures. Fingers brushing goblets, laughter shared in glances, a soft sigh beneath the harp's low hum. You realize the truth. Even in this brutal age, grace was a language, a way of saying, I'm still here. Your hostess leans toward you, whispering, you see now, beauty isn't survival's opposite. It's how we survive with dignity. You nod, slow and thoughtful. When you finally leave the hall, the air outside is cool and sweet. Stars scatter like spilled salt across the sky. You walk carefully, posture still perfect, though no one's watching now. Each breath feels deliberate, each step a quiet claim of space and self. Maybe you won't last long in this world. Its poisons, its rules, its merciless ideals. But for tonight, you walk like someone who belongs to it. The bells toll midnight. The world exhales. You find your bed again, the linen soft and clean, the fire whispering low. The long journey, the paints, the powders, the pain, has left you raw but awake. Your hostess hums an old lullaby as she shutters the window. Beauty fades, she murmurs, but the memory of it, that lingers longer than youth. You close your eyes, feeling the ache in your shoulders. The hum of old music still vibrating in your bones. Somewhere between exhaustion and peace, you realize you've been transformed, not into perfection, but into understanding. The firelight softens now, its crackle slowing to a hush. The world outside is quiet, just wind brushing through the eaves and the far-off murmur of a church bell winding down the night. You breathe deeply, letting the warmth of everything you've endured settle somewhere deep inside your chest. All those strange rituals, ashes and vinegar, silk and sin, they feel distant now, like dreams that belonged to another body. Yet, in their strange way, they've revealed something enduring about you, about all of us. That the search for beauty has never really been about vanity. It's been about belonging, about finding light in a dark and unpredictable world. You picture the women you've met along this journey, faces half lit by fire, hands raw from labor, eyes sharp with quiet defiance. They plucked, painted, powdered, and prayed not just to please, but to endure. Every rule that sought to break them became, somehow, a form of strength. So, tonight, as you rest beneath these ancient rafters, let that thought wrap around you like a blanket. That beauty, in all its impossible forms, has always been a way of saying, I am still here. The past may be brutal, but you've walked through it, step by trembling step, and come out shining, not polished, but human. Now, let your breath slow. Let your body loosen into the bed. The story is over, but the stillness is yours. Somewhere outside, dawn waits patiently, its light soft and forgiving. You'll face it soon enough. For now, just rest. You've survived history.